Mic. Camera. Action.
I guess if I asked you a question about your character, it would be, what is your character's heart like? Because he seems like an attorney at first with not so high aspirations who is thrown into the middle of truth.
He's got. I think Baldwin's got a big heart. I think there's no compassion at the beginning. He's completely callous to the humanity of the issue. He's got a case. He knows how to win it. Don't feed me all this other righteous crusade cause BS is what's in his mind. He just doesn't. It's not that he didn't care. He didn't know, man. I mean, he knows how to do one thing, and that's why he was one of the reasons why he was such a great character, and one fun for me to be able to play. And is that he was good at one thing. A lot of other characters I've played are good at a lot of things, and are always sitting back and listening and waiting to receive some good food to do something with. Baldwin kind of put his head down and went after one thing and was kind of oblivious to the rest of the world around him, and that's where some humor comes out, and that's also where his craft and his genius came out. He learned some humanity.
All right. Welcome back to the Filmography, the show dedicated to watching every credited film from an actor's complete back catalogue, from past debut through to present day, in chronological order. Each episode, I'm joined by an esteemed guest to watch and discuss the next entry from the focused filmography. I consider how it ranks amidst their career and whether we can trace any typecasting trends or topic traits or theatrical tics. Today's guest is YouTube voice of reason, Angry Andy. Today's film is Steven Spielberg's historical drama, Amistad, from 1997. We watch, you listen, and hopefully watch along too. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Oh, hello. I'm perfectly fine. another glorious day in paradise. Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. I mean, yeah, we've got our usual kind of gripes, I'm sure, about life, but compared to what many of these people in Amistad go through, I think we should probably temper our everyday complaints, right?
Oh yeah. Let's get rid of all the issues with my almond milk curdling in my coffee. We'll get past that. Yeah. Oh God, it's terrible.
I mean, Sink and his crew, they'd be well happy with their curdled almond milk, couldn't they?
Yeah. Good God. Talk about what a difference a couple of 100 years makes, I suppose. Yeah. Good gravy. But yeah, an interesting movie in no end.
Yeah.
We've got a lot to talk about, haven't we?
We have, and it's great to have you on. I think this is the first time we've done just a you and me, which is nice.
We've had Dan with us. We had Dan for that glorious movie, Hobbs Shaw.
Yeah. And I tried to find you one this time, which was a bit more, wasn't me just throwing you under the bus or throwing you under the ship, I should say, or throwing in chains or, making some really inappropriate puns considering the seriousness of this movie. But yeah, I mean, you are somebody who is interested in kind of history. I know we've just been talking off air, like kind of more kind of World War II history is like kind of your area of expertise, but you are somebody who has a lot to say in terms of films with historical value or with like factual, meaningful value. I think you're a good voice in that realm. So that's why I liked you as a pick for this episode.
Thank you. Yeah, I do enjoy history. I get that from my grandmother, who was a history teacher. So I think her speciality when she was a history teacher was looking into American history. So that encompasses all parts of it, right back to the War of Independence and all the way up to past the Wild West through to World War II and their involvement and how everything changed after that, really. So yeah, I mean, like we were saying beforehand, I don't really have a great wealth of knowledge around the slave trade and its subsequent abolishment. through the Civil War. I mean, the Civil War, I think, excuse me, the Civil War for me is something that I barely have any knowledge on at all, to be fair, the American Civil War. I don't know why that is, because that kind of fits around the Wild West era, which is, an era of interest to me. So, yeah, it's something I'm not really, too knowledgeable about, but, I'm well aware of the history and significance of sort of this event that the film shows, and then what happened later on down the line. So, yeah, it's been an interesting watch. I watched it, a good many years ago, and like I said to you before we started recording, I was surprised how little I actually remembered of the film, and I think that kind of speaks volumes, as we were alluding to before we started recording as well, as to where this film fits within Spielberg's catalogue of his greats and not so greats, to be fair. So yeah, it'll be interesting to go through it.
Definitely, that's something I want us to talk about later, kind of where this fits, we feel, in that kind of canon of like historical movies that Spielberg keeps coming back to. I think it's an interesting conversation. I can't say I've seen all of them, and certainly haven't seen a few of them for a long time. And watching Amistad, I realised I haven't ever seen this before at all. This was the first watch for me, and I think it became quite clear as soon as it started. Oh yeah, I would have remembered this if I'd seen it before. Yeah, I think maybe I'd seen trailers or parts of it, or as we were talking, 97. I was 17 at this point. I'm not sure this is the movie I was looking for, really, from Spielberg. And when at that point, I was looking for the Jurassic Parks, and that comes slightly later, the Minority Reports, and that was a sort of place I was in for him. I had seen Schindler's List, of course, as we all had. Yeah. But I'm unlike you. I haven't gone back to that a lot. It's a tough watch. It's a powerful watch, and it's an important watch, as this is at times. But as you just said, there are long sections of this that drag, that feel like
they do.
There's not a lot going on, and this I feel like could be cut way down, could be pared way down. What about you?
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, we also sort of alluded to it, didn't we? That a lot of the characters just seem to get lost as well, don't they? When you're going through it, and I think that's the problem with how long the film is. It does just take its time a bit too much. I don't know whether that's the way that it's just written, or whether it's the passion project coming through from Spielberg that he has to get certain bits and pieces right, certain bits and pieces accurate. I don't know. It's a difficult one, really, to sort of judge when it is such an important film, to go through. And it is in the same vein like Schindler's List. It doesn't come across as I'm trying to think of a better word than preachy, but it doesn't come across as being preachy. It comes across as like, this is what happened. This is an honest sort of assessment of the situation, with what happened on the ship, and the trade in general, and how it had already been outlawed, the cross-Atlantic slave trade, but they were still going on. So but then in the same breath, like you say, you just like, do we really need to tread certain lines within the film? There are a lot of characters that come in and out, and you're like, who's he? What's their importance? And it doesn't feel like those characters that come through, you don't really get enough time to, deal with as real historical people. They kind of lose their importance. Whereas in other films, there'll be solid reason and, things for us as an audience member to go, I heard that name before, and go from there with them. I don't know what it is about this film. I really don't. It is very enjoyable on one hand, and then, like you said, on the other hand, you kind of go, I've dropped out a little bit here, and I need to come back in.
Yeah, that's definitely my experience watching it, and it is a stacked cast, isn't it? You've got the kind of big names of the time already. You've got Morgan Freeman, Anthony Hopkins, and then you've got like obviously Jimon. I think I'm saying his name right, Jimon Hounsou. Like he was a breakthrough role for him. Obviously, he is fantastic in this. You've got McConaughey, who's on a rise. You've got Anna Paquin. We've definitely got to talk about her accent.
Tell you what, it took me a second. I was like, I know that face. Yeah. Who is this person? And I was like, oh God, somebody
I don't know where she's supposed to be from.
Somebody told her to do the wrong thing. Yeah, bless her.
But Stellan Skarsgård is the one, isn't it? Like, he feels like he's going to have an important part early on, and then he pops in for 2 more scenes very briefly and is out the movie. And he's kind of a character we're supposed to align ourselves with early doors. When we first meet him, he's in the newspaper business, it appears to me, or maybe he's a businessman and one of those is a newspaper. And I really like that shot where we see like one newspaper with like kind of the polemic headline of like savagery at sea, I think it says. And then he puts this newspaper called The Emancipator in front of it. I think the original paper, which Morgan Freeman's character Jotun's holding, is called like New Haven. And I'm getting it, guys. Like this is not subtle what you're doing here. And then he puts The Emancipator in front of it, and it's something like, saved at sea or like liberation at sea or something. So I think, that was a nice touch, actually. It was quite well done. And they set him up to be like this kind of character who's on the right side. Yeah,
almost and like he's going to be the one that we're sort of following the entire way through, like over the shoulder. He's trying to, drum up support and drum up people involved. But it almost seems as though as soon as McConaughey's character comes to the fore, that he completely goes out of the way. And then again, like we said before we started recording, that happens later on as well. There's a lot of passing the torch to characters. But then you're like, well, why? Why are you doing that? Like, I didn't have any sort of, apart from, God, I can't say his name either. Forgive the butchering the pronunciation, but the only character sort of like felt like it was truly weird. And maybe that's the point. Is Dijman Honsu's character? Yeah. But again, we have that language barrier, don't we, all the way through the film? So, But yeah, like you said, there's loads of people in there. Chiwetel Ejiofor's in here. Again, I'm butchered that name. I apologise. Pete Postlethwaite. I had no idea he's in this film. So
as soon as you hear him, though, you're like, that's you don't have to see him. You're like that. He's got such a cadence, doesn't he? Like that's Pete Postlethwaite. And wasn't he in Lost World as well?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, so he plays Roland Tembo in Lost World, doesn't he? Like, do you want to set up base camp or a buffet? I was bloody loving.
He's having a good year with Spielberg, isn't he? In '97.
Again, and you can see all the major players, with Spielberg. I think there's another guy. I think the guy who plays the new leader of InGen in the Lost World in Amistad as well. He's one of the bureaucrats or something sat in the background during a dinner, and he's in there. So you can see all the major players that Spielberg's like, I like you. We're going to work together for a little bit, coming through. But yeah, I don't know whether that's a bit of a misalignment on his part. He doesn't use some of the actors right, maybe.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if like that passing the baton. I really like that. Like maybe that is quote unquote historically accurate, and I guess we'll have to talk about the inaccuracies at points as well. But this is where like better kind of historical movies or biographies, or they write characters so that and they combine them together. And I think that's a truism that we accept of biographies or histories, where it's like there were 4 people that did this, but we're going to make it one character just for story simplicity. And we just kind of are happy. We buy into that as audience members. And that might have been better here, I think, to lose some of these characters because it is too unwieldy. And it's like this guy's here and he's doing that. And then we're going over here and he's, we're going to compare to Schindler's List a lot, probably.
Yeah. I think just on the basis of what the films are being, the fundamental level, what they're trying to say, from an atrocity sort of standpoint. I think it's unavoidable, really, because I think a lot of reviewers at the time might have been that way inclined, going, "Oh, this is his next Schindler's List," just in the same way that Lost World was, "Oh, this is the sequel to Jurassic Park." Expecting the same. And with both films, we didn't. We got completely opposite. So, I think it's one of those where you don't want to compare and contrast, but you have no choice because that's the choice that was made, weirdly enough. So it's difficult, isn't it?
It is, and I think Schindler's List has that real focus, doesn't it? It has the kind of 2 characters. It has Ralph Fiennes and it has Liam Neeson, doesn't it? And they're kind of there's 2 viewpoints, and that makes it really simple for us as an audience to kind of get on board with what the story is. I understand there's characters around that, but they're the linchpins, aren't they?
Yeah, they're the anchor points right the way through the film. Whereas this film, there is no anchor point. The anchor points that we think we've got, whether it be Morgan Freeman, whether it be Matthew McConaughey, they aren't really there. And then we have Anthony Hopkins coming in and out, and he does take the lead in towards the end of the film with with the brilliant monologue, absolutely brilliant monologue. I think I read it was like a 7-page monologue that he nailed in one take, which is fucking incredible. But again, like as good a monologue as it is, we didn't spend enough time with the character John Adams. I mean, we know who he is. I mean, again, it's American history, so it's difficult to sort of go, well, yeah, okay, that person. But you know, knowing who he is, we're still like, oh, okay. Oh. Where are these other characters? Where have they gone to? And yeah, it just ends.
Yeah. I think, you know, Sinkay, you said it. He's our character that we're with all the way through. Literally in the first shot, he's in the boat and he manages to ease like a nail out of, doesn't he, of the board, and then he starts the kind of, I don't know what the right word is. It's not a mutiny because we're on their side. It's
an uprising, isn't it? I think it's I think that's the best way to call it.
Because we want them to succeed. And we see him all the way through. And I think the decision to have the kind of is it Mende language, I believe, and like to not have subtitles for large parts of this. I think that was a really interesting choice because it put us in the position of the characters in the movie and and helped us understand Sinkay and what he was going through and his fellow uprisers were going through, and that they were trying to communicate and they couldn't. I thought they were some of the best scenes in the movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it does keep you that little bit removed at the same time. So all these decisions I understand creatively, but they don't necessarily add to kind of the cinematic experience, unfortunately.
No, it makes it that little bit more difficult to sort of go along with the journey as it is. I mean, I'm trying. It's difficult to sort of say. I just want to watch entertainment when it's, you know, a film about slavery and whatever. And it's the same thing. You know, whenever I go back to watch Schindler's List, for example, I'm there because I really enjoyed the film. Obviously, I don't enjoy the subject matter, but that's the thing. It's managing both those sort of anti-elements. Entertainment versus, you know, watching something that's a really difficult watch. But again, it's, you know, trying to watch it from sort of a critical standpoint or, you know, an analytical standpoint, which is, you know, what I've done, you know, for years now. When I wish sometimes I really didn't. It's just completely unavoidable. But yeah, that's you know, that's how I watch this film. Really, it's like I want to be brought along with the journey. But there's still bits and pieces that stick out to me like thorns, and I'm like, okay, I'm not quite invested. And I think, you know, as interesting an angle as it is, I think it might well have actually been beneficial if there was some sort of like, we don't understand what they're saying, but we're still with these people. You know, give us the subtitles. Give us the subtitles. So it would bring us more in. I think. I mean, we do get you know, the reveal sort of sequence, don't they, of exactly what happened, and, you know, with his family, and, you know, the explanation, you know, via the interpreter. But again, it's still like, okay, there's an element of heart missing maybe there.
I agree. I think a film that it put in mind for me when we had the kind of the dialogue not being translated and you kind of following along from kind of facial expressions and mannerisms and kind of interactions was Apocalypto. I don't know if you've seen that, the Mel Gibson Mayan movie.
Oh, Apocalypto, yeah.
And that whole movie is in the Mayan language. Forgive me, I'm not sure what it is, but you kind of do get all the way through what's going on. That's a very different movie. It's kind of an action-based movie. It's a chase movie. It's wonderful, I think, actually. You know, I know we shouldn't really talk good things about Mel Gibson, but that's a really strong movie.
It's unavoidable, isn't it? I bloody love The Patriot for my sins.
Right, yeah.
You know, I can't avoid it. I love Signs. I love Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Don't love him, but, you know, he's made some good movies. There's not a lot we can do about that, is there?
No, exactly. I mean, yeah.
So it is possible to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
But what I think the difference was for me is that Apocalypto has a real sense of like authenticity. It feels like you're there in that time with these people. So therefore the language fits with what you're watching. Whereas here I don't know about you, but the whole thing, right from the start, and even with the kind of hard, harrowing moments, like you were talking about the flashback sequence with Sing-K, there's some really tough stuff to watch during that sequence.
Yeah.
But it just all feels artificial. It all feels kind of like I don't know, like this is a BBC production that I might be watching on a Sunday afternoon, or I don't know if you felt the same, but I never felt like, as you said, like totally connected. I never felt like what I was watching was happening. It felt like I was watching somebody's rendition of what was happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it almost does play a little bit more like like an A-level history recording, like you say, from the BBC. It sounds bloody awful to put it that way, but again, this is the issue with, you know, when you look at Schindler's List and how well crafted that film is. When you look at it, just from the top down, the production value, this came out 5 years later, 5 years after, and
four.
There's some clear sort of, I don't know, missing elements that just made Schindler's List work so well. Whether it is just with the way it's shot, I'm not just saying the black and white, but again, that adds a level of sort of, you don't feel detached from it, even though it is in black and white. However, with this, I don't know what it is. Is it the color palette? Is it some of the way it's shot? Maybe it comes across as just like almost like it would be better served as being a theatre piece rather than a movie, or even you know, almost like a TV show. I think this was supposed to be a HBO project at one point, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's funded, isn't it, by HBO?
So, you know, did they take a lot of elements that were already sort of there? I don't know. I didn't look too much into that, but
and 97 TV quality is not 2025 TV quality. Do you know what I mean? It's not budgets for that then were TV quality budgets, whereas obviously they're now movie scale budgets, aren't they? So yeah, I hear you. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I do just think it is like, again, it's just it's so difficult to try and judge on its own merits when there is something that brilliant out there. I mean, even with the way it ends, we get like the sort of ending sort of, you know, end credits crawl, if you like, of like what happened to these people afterwards. And again, it doesn't have the same ringing impact that the end of Schindler's List did. With all the people, you know, the ancestors coming to, you know, Schindler's grave, you know, and literally telling us what happened to a lot of the families and a lot of the people after it, even Ray Fiennes' character as well. So it doesn't seem to have that impact. It's just a bit less. It's just a bit less.
I wonder if it's
I kind of feel terrible for saying that. I kind of feel terrible because I think there are some good moments in there. I think by and large the performances are okay. They are pretty decent. It's just I just didn't feel like a resounding sort of that hit me.
But I think it's fair. It's not a bad movie in any respect, but you know, when it's Spielberg, you are already starting at a level. Do you know what I mean? You're starting at a 7 or an 8.
Yeah.
You know, if this was Paul Thomas Anderson, not Paul Thomas Anderson, that's another 8. If it's Paul W.S. Anderson, get my Andersons right. You know, if it's Mortal Kombat, Resident Evil style filmmaker, then you're starting with a lower bar. So it's Spielberg, so we start with a high bar, and the stuff that he's made is of quality. So all I could think was just a connection to the material.
Yeah,
that, you know, he wants to tell the story, and it's an important story, but it's not. He's not connected. He's not invested in this story like he is with Schindler's List, even like he's with Saving Private Ryan that came out a year later. Like, again, that has authenticity. That has verisimilitude. We know how realistic that opening scene is. But even when it gets a bit melodramatic, you're bought into the characters and the truth of it.
Yeah.
Here it just, there is something just a bit off.
Yeah. There is a wild disconnect, isn't there? And like you say, obviously Spielberg's got a lot of investment, you know, within Schindler's List for the very obvious reason. You know, we don't need to go into it, but it's there, isn't it? Whereas this one, it almost it is as though, do this film, Mr. Spielberg, and then you can do whatever you want with Saving Private Ryan. You can do whatever you want. You've got Lost World coming as well. it almost, again, it sounds bloody awful positing that, but that's the way it kind of feels. Like you've got The Lost World coming out, which is great, but we need you to do this one as well. And then Saving Private Ryan, you want to hire the Irish Army, you're going to make this film for us. Being on a very cynical level, it could well be. I mean, we know those kind of deals get struck, don't we? With directors. With actors.
Yeah.
You want to make this
one for me, one for them. Yeah.
You do this for us, and try and replicate what you did with Schindler's List. Try and do what you replicate with Jurassic Park or any of those other films over the last 10, 15 years. Okay, fine. So I can go to Ireland and blow up a beach. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. It's interesting, isn't it? Because Debbie Allen is kind of the driving force behind this, from what I understand in terms of doing my research and stuff. She was putting it together. I guess she came to Spielberg and wanted him to direct it. Yeah. So again,
for good reason.
Yeah, but she's the one. Schindler's List. He's the one that's driving it. He's the one who has the creative. He's the creative force, whereas she's the one here. So perhaps she's come to him knowing his pedigree. He can't quite get that connection with the material that allows that kind of Spielberg magic to come through, maybe.
Yeah, and I think it is that, isn't it? It is just sort of lacking that magical spark. I mean, there are elements in there where you think it's gonna I want to say kick off, but it's going to ignite, but it doesn't really sort of it doesn't catch on, does it? It just kind of simmers away right the way through. There's no real sort of resounding moment at any point in the movie. No. Like you say, we do have those harrowing moments. The entire sort of reveal of what happens on the ship is fucking ghastly, isn't it? And that's the real shock value of the film. And then because they portray the scene as it's coming directly from Cinque, he's explained everything, and so we are there with him through that moment, aren't we? But yeah, it does. Even after that point, where you think, okay, we've had this rousing reveal, this shocking reveal, and then again, it just kind of simmers along.
Yeah, that's the perfect word, simmers. And there's moments like McConaughey and Cinque. I think McConaughey and Hounsey, they've got good chemistry. Like the scene when he's drawing in the mud and they're trying to connect, and then through their kind of interactions in that second act, I think there's little moments where you can see that kind of Spielberg control of actors, and he's always really good at kind of managing space. I think Spielberg of the proxemics of a scene and where he puts people. There's that famous Jaws shot, which is on the ferry. A small moment in Jaws compared to a lot of things that happen, but the moment when Roy Schneider's on the ferry and it's going across and he's talking to the mayor, how Spielberg controls where all the people are in that space is celebrated, and how he does that. And I think that is again here when he's got moments in the prison of people talking together, or moments in the courtroom perhaps. But it just, there's never like a... I guess what I'm saying is you would never necessarily know this is a Spielberg movie if his name wasn't on it.
No, yeah, exactly. You wouldn't know unless you've been told it or you're researching it. It is sort of like, reminds me a bit of Lincoln as well, like just how detached I was from that as well. I don't know what it is. I think there's a lot of films where Spielberg is like that, isn't there? I mean, we love him, but there are when you think deep down, there are a lot of his films where you go, okay, that didn't really work. I didn't feel the magic. I didn't feel like you were, drawing that distance, drawing that connective tissue that we've seen work so well.
Yes,
it's just strange. But yeah, I agree. I think the performances do this film more justice. I think without them, I think the film would be a lot less. And I think it is just those smaller moments when they are, trying to understand each other, trying to, fight their way through the case. I think one of my favourite scenes is earlier on when everybody's trying to make claim to the ship, and they're all coming out of all the woodwork, literally coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
People coming out from the back, around corners and whatever. And that scene is really well done because there's a bit of lightness to it as well. You get, this is what I'm saying, like there's a little bit of that Spielberg spark in there where characters are, they are just literally caricatures of, somebody wanted to claim for the crown, somebody wanted to claim for shipping rights, somebody wanted to claim the product as it is. There's little moments, and there's you can tell when, I think it's the judge and when Pete Postlethwaite's character is just getting really pissed off because these people just keep coming forward and go, I want to make a claim, and there's those little wry looks of the character, and that's great directing there, because like he's playing with all these different characters, trying to just crack on with the proceedings, and yet everybody's trying to muscle their way in, and then obviously you get McConaughey coming in as well. So there's those smaller moments, those tighter scenes when you're like, yes, okay, this is perfect, this is great. But then we jump to a scene which doesn't quite work and just seems to drag on for ages. It's a shame almost, I think. It's a bit of a shame.
No, I agree. And, you touched on there being these light-hearted moments there. And I think there are a few of them. There's some really dark moments, like, as we said, the flashback, the opening is really quite bloody and brutal.
Yeah, really intense opening, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, for Spielberg at this point, we haven't quite got to Saving Private Ryan yet. No. We know we can do it from that point forwards, but yeah, it feels, intense is the right word. And then we do have these more light-hearted moments, and I couldn't decide. They were sort of got me. I was sort of like, a little chuckle as I was watching it, but I couldn't quite decide, like, is that right for what we're watching? Is that fitting? I don't know. Life has shades. Of course it does. Even on your worst day, somebody might say or do something that makes you laugh. I get it. But, this is a weighty subject matter. Do we want those little kind of Spielberg lighthearted moments, or do we want that real? And again, maybe that's where there's that disconnect from subject matter and creative here. I'm not sure. What did you think about the lighthearted moments? Do you think they all worked? Were you bought in? Did you think it fit the tone? I don't know.
I think, again, it's juggling them, isn't it? So it's mixing them in with the poignancy of, what we're being shown. So I think one of the moments was, of course, when McConaughey's trying to explain, like, I'm not a law law scholar. I deal in real estate, and you're like, the characters are like, what do you think you can offer then? That they play that as though it's a lighthearted moment, which
we're talking about people as being property. That's hard. That's a hard thing to joke about.
Exactly, but it kind of works because it's the disconnect of the characters versus what they're having to deal with. But then, it works in their favor as they keep going on, where they see the especially McConaughey, he becomes actively invested in this. He breaks things apart. He pulls apart, the defense the prosecution kind of side of everything, doesn't he? By referring to real estate law, and so it does work. Some of those lighthearted moments do work when they're pushed later on to make a case. But then I think I'm not sure everything works in the same way. Again, it's really hard to sort of explain because the film has varying tones throughout, doesn't it? It wants to be brutal. It wants to be shocking. At the same time, it wants to be a courtroom drama. It wants to be, it wants to be a poignant piece on, freedom and morality, and then it wants to be a character drama as well. So you're kind of juggling multiple different elements there that I don't think there's any kind of balance at all, really. So it's kind of hard to say whether any lighthearted moments work.
And that doesn't stop for a little joke, does it? It commits, and it's like, we're going to be serious, and this is a serious thing. And so again, I think perhaps it's just there wasn't quite faith in the material to stay serious all the way through. And amongst those kind of bits that drag, at times I was jolted a little bit out of it. Like, Anthony Hopkins is very good in that main scene at the end when he gives a 7-page monologue, but his earlier appearance, for a while I was kind of thinking, like, he got an Oscar nom for this. Like, he looks like a Scrooge character. It looks like he should be in A Christmas Carol, like the way he's been styled. And I wasn't quite buying him in the role until I get it. Like, kind of the last 45 minutes. The film sort of finishes at an hour and 45. McConaughey wins the case. Hooray!
Yeah.
And then we get another 45 minutes. And that's kind of just to give Anthony Hopkins something to give him a big monologue. But it's the truth of the story, obviously. But it does. You said it does kind of feel like that. It's like we've seen the film now. Okay, it's done. That's almost the bit that should have come up on the text. This was then sent to Supreme Court where John Adams stepped in and but we've got Anthony Hopkins, so we've got to give him a speech. I wasn't really buying him for a long time, and I couldn't really understand why he was so important. We're just watching him pot around in a greenhouse and keep sending people away, and
looking confused as well for long periods.
Yeah, it was another. Go on, sorry. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say. I mean, I was a bit sort of thrown out. I think just purely because his accent didn't work for me, and then again when I was reading through sort of like, the trivia as it were, and I think at one point they were trying to get Dustin Hoffman for the role, and it was like, okay, you've got somebody who is, was there a better person out there for it? But then again, he got an Oscar nom, so what the fuck do I know?
Yeah.
It's one of those, isn't it? Again, same thing. It's like, I get it. I think his role only sort of works in that monologue. I wasn't like same as you. I wasn't invested at all with it, with the way he was performing on the film. It kind of annoyed me, and I guess again that's kind of the point, because he just completely refuses to help. Yeah, maybe that was the bloody point, but it wasn't the way I was feeling it. I wasn't feeling annoyed or frustration for the characters. I was feeling annoyed. I was like, well, what the fuck are you doing here then? Why are we even bothering? And again, that's without knowing the history all that much and having forgotten what actually happens in the film, I was just kind of like, well, why do we even keep bothering to have him? Go back to him. Ignorance from my part, but it still made me sort of, no, I just don't care why we keep.
No, I agree.
Hopkins, who's struggling to do an accent, which more for me in that monologue, he actually fucking nails it, doesn't he? It's a great scene. It's a really great monologue. But again, that almost feels completely separate to everything we've seen before in the movie, because everyone just kind of sits and takes it. There's no there's no reaction, which is what I found really strange. The monologue is fucking great, but in that scene, apart from Sinke standing up and other people watching him, nobody fucking reacts.
It's like the actors are watching Anthony Hopkins, not the characters are watching John Adams. Absolutely. They're all
the
mesmerised by Hopkins.
The actors room, he's just performing it, which I found really strange. Like in sequences like that, where the whole point of that monologue is that he's changing people's minds. Well, he's not changing their minds. He's reaffirming what the United States is supposed to stand for at this point, and their commitment to eventually abolishing slavery, which is and having it already been outlawed, the cross-Atlantic trade having been already outlawed. But everyone, all those extras, they're quite clearly extras that have been told just to sit there and be quiet, and it kind of takes away when you're looking, going, I need to see a reaction from some of these Supreme Court leaders, and they're all just sat there wearing like baffled by Anthony Hopkins, giving a rousing speech in one take. It's strange, and I think again that's a measure on the film as well. There are so many things which don't work because the wrong choices are made or rushed, or Spielberg quite clearly wants to get back and have Eddie Carr beaten by two T-Rexes. Is that what the situation was? He was making this at the same time as editing The Lost World. I don't know. Could be. Yeah,
I don't know the order either. But it's interesting when you compare this scene, which is celebrated, and Hopkins is great. But in terms of, like you said, the makeup of the scene and everyone else in it, compared to the scene you spoke about before, which is, I have a claim and I have a claim, and McConaughey's doing a good job, and people keep speaking over him, and Postlethwaite is getting frustrated. And compare those two scenes against one another. Actually, the better scene is the earlier one. It just doesn't have a world famous actor giving a grandstanding performance.
Yeah. And maybe the idea is that, those earlier arguments in the film are shuttered away by somebody who holds immense power and respect. Yeah. Fine, fair enough. But I still want somebody to raise an eyebrow or, look to the person sat next to him and go, he's making a lot of fucking sense here. I still need anything. I don't just want them sat there fucking stone statues or dummies that have been put in place because nobody else was available apart from Sir Anthony Hopkins. It's just a bit strange. Again, it's just the disconnect, isn't it? The disconnect between earlier moments, the films, parts that do work well, those smaller moments. Then we have this again small moment that doesn't really work, and yet is still fucking brilliant, but purely because the actor delivering it is fucking doing a great job. So it's so strange. It's such a strange scene.
And I don't, you mentioned how Hounsou as Cinque stands up. I didn't really buy their quick relationship either, considering where he got to with McConaughey's lawyer, where he got distrust in him, and rightly so, understandably so, but not through McConaughey's character's fault, but because of the system of law. You've won twice already, now you've got to go to Supreme Court. I get why he's getting pissed off. Yeah. But then suddenly it was like, well, here's this old dude and just
showing you flowers.
Yeah, and I'm just going to, because it's a flower from Africa, I'm just going to totally buy into what you've got to say. I didn't think, I thought the Cinque, I can't think even what the name of McConaughey's character was called.
Robert. Oh, was it Robert?
I'll look at him now.
Robert
Sherman Baldwin. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I thought Cinque and Baldwin and McConaughey and Hounsou had much better chemistry than Hopkins and Hounsou. So again, I get it. It's historically accurate to have that speech, fine. But I don't know. It's just a shame that we had to leave McConaughey behind and for him to drop out, because those scenes between them have been working really well.
Yeah, we lose that typical, Hollywood moment at the end of the film, don't we? Where they're together, thank you for everything, kind of. I mean, we do get one, don't we? But it almost feels like, oh well, we kind of forgot about you for a little while. We're back now.
45 minutes.
Thanks for everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a shame, isn't it? Because I'm thinking of A Time to Kill that I've done recently as well, of course, McConaughey, and he gets the big courtroom speech in that, and he does a blinding job.
There's a lot of parallels between that film and this film from McConaughey, isn't there? I think
there is.
He loves doing courtroom dramas, doesn't he?
He does. Well, I mean, his mum.
Damn him for going into his fucking rom-com era.
They were pushing him. That was going to be his career, wasn't it? He was going to train in law until he jacked it all in one day and decided to be an actor. But obviously, I'm happy because I'm getting to watch all his movies.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously there's quite a few people who point the white savior finger at this movie. I think that I want to talk about that. I think that's a bit misjudged, because I think Cinque is the main character. He has to rely on white people because he's in America and the law system is run by old white people.
I don't like
what do you think? Yeah, do you think it's kind of got that white savior sense, or do you think it managed to not completely avoid it, because it can't? But I think the white savior figures, such as McConaughey's lawyer. Sorry, that's a big pause from me.
Yeah.
Are kind of called out in their kind of issues, and Skarsgård's character is called out in his kind of viewpoints at times. And
even Morgan Freeman's character, who's this, I think he's made up for this film, but even he sort of called out as being this, completely detached from the issues and the problems that
you're privileged black, you're not.
Yeah, exactly. And even he's completely detached from it. So it does sort of point fingers at multiple different sides of the argument. I don't know. Like I said at the start, I don't feel it's overly preachy.
No.
So to me, I don't necessarily think it's the white savior kind of thing. It's always a difficult thing to try and sort of argue this as being being a white person. But again, I don't, like I said, I don't have any real historical knowledge of how everything happened. But
no.
It's difficult when the written history dictates what happened. All right, so it was the Supreme Court that quashed this all. So it was a bunch of white men wearing gowns and whatever, and then of course it was Abraham Lincoln that spearheaded the abolishment of slavery. So, you can't avoid the history as it is. You've got to do certain things with a certain sense of historical accuracy, and unfortunately it was people, it was white people that sorted this. Well, I say sorted it, but were the ones that resolved the situation as it is.
I just wonder if by avoiding that Hollywood ending, as you called it, and I think that was the right term, it kind of avoids that bigger issue. It's not the white guy giving the great speech, acting as if he understands what it's like to be black and be in the situation. That would be the white kind of savior problem. I think Cinque been able to articulate and be intelligent and be able to explain. And as Hopkins, as Adam says, kind of, I used your words in order to convince people. I think, we've been critical of like characters coming in and out, but perhaps by that happening, it kind of avoids that larger issue somewhat, maybe.
Yeah, rather than just being one singular person, like, whether it be McConaughey's character being the one that's solved the issue himself. It is other people coming in to orbit around Cinque, rather than Cinque just being, passed from pillar to post, as it were. I guess that's...
You're right. I mean, it's hard for white guys sitting here talking about this, but, as I always say to my students, and it surprises them sometimes, for me to be able to stand here and talk as a white guy with my white privilege to a class of multicultural students, if I can own that, then that's already breaking the cycle. And I think, it's okay. We're white guys talking about it from a perspective where we don't want to be white saviors and we don't want to be white guys with all the privilege and power. I think it's okay to talk about it.
Yeah, of course it is.
Because we're coming at it from the right perspective and the right angle. We want the right things in this conversation. We want Cinque to be the hero of his own story.
Yeah, exactly. I think he is in his own way, isn't he? I think he is in his own way because there is that language barrier there. He can't articulate in a certain way, so he has to articulate in a way that comes across as aggressive and abrupt and straight to the point. Quite literally drawing things on the floor and saying, "Look, this, this is what I fucking want. This is what we need." And even, the understanding of the words that he does say in English, he develops that ability, doesn't he? He develops that understanding of like this is what this word means. Give it to us.
Yeah, what's the saying? Is it we us free? I think he says, doesn't it? Is it something like that? I might be paraphrasing that slightly wrong. It's definitely us free, I think. It's
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's his moment of standing up. Like, I've learnt these words, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. These words that are actually paramount to the United States of America, paramount to your people, will give us that. Give us that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting from that perspective, isn't it? Because there's all that, we could be throwing shade about the historical inaccuracies and about white savior tropes and depiction of violence against minorities, and there's lots of things we could be saying about this. And if you wanted to find these things to be negative, but I think it does make an effort to try and tell the story in the right way.
Yeah,
I think the intentions are good from everybody concerned. It's just it doesn't always quite come off in the way which other films that Spielberg has been behind have done better.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you mentioned accents. Hopkins applicants. There's two people who are also putting on accents in this. Let's start with Paquin before we do a bigger section on McConaughey. Anna Paquin is playing the Spanish Queen at 12 years old, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how old she is at this point because this is kind of between the piano and X-Men, isn't it?
Yeah. God, it took me a while. It took me seconds to realise it was her. Absolutely, Jesus, God, dreadful. Dreadful, honestly dreadful. Like I said, we've Anthony Hopkins already thrown me out a little bit. I was a bit like, oh Jesus, just absolutely dreadful. I mean, it's not her fault, is it?
No, right. I just wrote Anna Paquin's accent is, and I just put ... and ellipsis. I thought I'll let Andy fill that bit in.
Just dreadful. It's just one of those things, isn't it?
She only has like 2 or 3 scenes, really, doesn't she? She's barely in it. The first scene, she's like having a breakfast or something. Then the second scene, she's walking, dictating a letter. And the third scene, she's like bouncing on her bed with her doll. So, it's just that central moment, unfortunately for her. It's probably not one she looks back on as a high point of her career.
No, not at all. I think it's kind of like, it's a means to an end, isn't it?
Yeah. What about McConaughey then? Like, he's really toning down his Texan accent.
He is, yeah. But
he's playing a guy from Philadelphia. Yeah, it creeps in, y'all.
Philadelphia, my ass. It comes through quite a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. What did you think?
He does those flex.
Accent, his performance, like just in general, him.
I think he's. I really enjoyed him in this film. Like I said, you get. There's a lot of parallels between this and A Time to Kill, and obviously again a few years later with Lincoln Lawyer. I think he really enjoys these kind of movies. And I think it's obviously because of his, his prospective job before turning to acting. He knows what he's doing, doesn't he? He knows exactly how to approach the bench. He knows how to command the floor. When he gets up to talk to prosecution or to talk to the jury or whatever it may be. So I really enjoy him. He's in this. He's got a little bit of flamboyancy about him as well. Like because he tries to muscle his way in early on, doesn't he? When he's like, well, I'm just I can help, but I'm just I just deal with property. Oh, right, okay, but I know what I'm doing. And then because he nails that initial sort of hearing, we're like, okay, brilliant.
Yeah, it's like the pre-trial hearing, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's just brilliant. It's perfect. I think that scene was the most I was engaged in the entire film. I think when he just absolutely decimates them completely, and Pete Bosselway just sat there going, "No, okay, I've got nothing here." I think he's really good. Yeah, and dodgy maintaining of accents aside, I think he's really good for his part in this film. I just wanted more. I wanted more.
Yeah, he just like, as we said, last 45 minutes, he is a glorified extra. Really, he's just sort of sat behind a bench watching what's going on. Yeah, I don't know. I think you can't help but compare to A Time to Kill, and that's a starring role for him. That was the starring role for him. That was the breaking, and I think he's charming and he's confident. Yeah, there's something, and maybe it is just simply by losing the accent. I felt like there's just a little bit of his charisma is just a little bit tempered, a little bit subdued, and maybe that's the performance he's being asked to do. I hear what you're saying. Like there's little moments when it comes through, but I thought I liked him in it, but it didn't feel like
him.
No,
through, did it?
And you don't want every performance of an actor to be them. You want them to lose themselves, and he, as we will see in some later movies, he's amazing at losing himself in characters. But this kind of felt like a McConaughey character as you were saying, to walk in and be a bit flashy and be a bit cocky and kind of win the room. That's the stuff that he can do. And I don't know, just something about it just felt a little bit subdued is the only word I can use, really. Yeah.
I mean, it almost comes across as though he's tempered by the weight of it being a Spielberg movie. Maybe.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah,
like especially in amongst all these fucking greats, Anthony Hopkins, Morgan Freeman, even Pete Postlethwaite, I can only imagine sort of like Jesus Christ, Pete Postlethwaite.
Yeah.
Intense, really intense British actor, and then obviously Stellan Skarsgård, who's just fucking brilliant as well. Maybe it was just the weight of it, trying to maybe tempering himself maybe a little bit, keeping himself a little bit sort of reserved to try and give, not saying a better performance, but a measured performance.
That's a nice word, measured. Yeah, I like that. And it's interesting because the best bits, as we said, are when he's with Hounsou, when he's with the Cinque character. Yeah. So this is a relative newcomer, certainly a Hollywood newcomer in the shape of that actor. So perhaps you're right. There was that confidence there where he was helping him to shine, and they were working together to create their scenes to be really strong. Whereas he felt like, I'm against this seasoned pro here. I'm against that seasoned pro here. Yeah. I'm wondering if he's come across any of those yet up until this point in his career. And thinking back on the movies I've covered so far, probably not. He's worked with some good high-level directors. He's already worked with Linklater and Joel Schumacher and Robert Zemeckis. But in terms of actors, I mean, Bill Murray in Larger Than Life, but I mean, Jodie Foster in Contact, obviously, but it's kind of a different. He's meant to be charming and flirty, so that's kind of a different thing.
Yeah. I mean, even A Time to Kill, it's Samuel Jackson as well, who was breaking through as well, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And Sandra Bullock breaking through. And
this probably is the first time.
Well. Yeah. So,
even then, Kevin Spacey was kind of on the up, wasn't he? At that point, another person we're not going to talk about too much, but.
That is an interesting point. I think, it could be something. I'm just having to look through here. I mean, other than sort of Jodie Foster, I think, it could be a very real possibility. It's like, oh, Christ, Morgan Freeman's here, Anthony Hopkins is here.
Yeah,
fucking hell. I better fucking be an actor. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
I better temper some of this McConaugheyisms that I've got.
Yeah,
because he wanted to do a great job.
And I think he is. Yeah, and he is good. I think it's just not. It's not McConaughey charisma good.
Yeah, that's just it. I mean, like you say, that charisma does come through when we have those smaller scenes. When we have the scene where they're talking about where do you come from? That scene, where are you from? And then we have that where he fucking walks off to the other side of that courtyard, doesn't he?
Yeah, brilliant. When he's first in prison, he's brought the table in and all the different factions within the ship. They all keep moving the table, and he just keeps rolling with it. And those moments,
exactly. So it's quite obvious there with those smaller moments, with those say smaller actors, that there is this sort of like, oh, we'll build this scene together, we'll build it together. Whereas the older actors, maybe they're, well, I know how this scene works. I'll show you how this scene works. Whereas he's coming in going, we'll do this together. We'll craft this together. We'll create this scene together. Spielberg loves just rolling with it, doesn't he? So maybe that could have been the case. There's smaller scenes where it is just him and Cinque. Maybe that was the point. Maybe they did just roll with it. Camera's rolling. Let's go. Right, we'll craft it this way.
Yeah.
It's a possibility.
No, it's a fair shout. We'll never know, but I think I can certainly see that being. I just think there was one really good line. I think it's when he'd been in with the kind of different factions, and he'd been trying to convince them that he's going to be their lawyer and show them what he was doing. And then one of them, we get subtitles for this bit, says, "He's an idiot. He likes to hear himself talk." Which again, I thought, McConaughey's pretty good at playing the idiot if he wants to. He's certainly good at playing the character that talks a lot. Maybe that was thrown in to give him a moment of acknowledgement of where he's come from and where he's going to go. Yeah, I'm going to get you to give your ultimate review at the end of where you think this sits in his filmography, but he's working with Spielberg, right? This, you'd think, would jump straight to the top, working with a director of this field. But,
it doesn't, does it?
We'll get there, obviously. But it's not quite the kind of show-stopping performance you think you might get in a Spielberg movie from an actor at this point in their career on the rise.
No, and I think a lot of actors have benefited from being in Spielberg movies, haven't they? A hell of a lot of actors have benefited from it. They've really propelled their careers or set them up for life. I don't think it certainly didn't do him any harm at all.
No.
I think it just just having a look at what comes next. Really, did this play a bit of a almost? Did it play almost a little bit of a negative going forward? Maybe. Did it not quite get the reception that he wanted, and thought, do I need to shake things up a little bit? Do I need to go a certain different way? Yeah, because there are some windy films that come a bit later on, aren't there? Like a lot of windy films. Jesus, but again, it's a bit of an anomaly, isn't it? It's a bit of an anomaly as a film, as a film for McConaughey, as a film for Spielberg, as a film for half of these people. I think it is just it's an important film, but alas, it has been completely lost to time. It's been lost to the history of filmmaking. I'd hazard that people listening to this would never have seen it.
Yeah, I think probably.
I think it's a fair assumption to make. I think a lot of people would never have seen this. And again, when we say that it's a Spielberg film, it's a film featuring McConaughey, Morgan Freeman, Anthony Hopkins. I think people might be surprised and go, "Really?
Yeah.
I've never seen this film. I've never seen it." Like you say, you thought you'd seen it, but it turns out you probably haven't.
No, definitely haven't.
That might be the case for everybody. Oh yeah, I saw that film. Well, did you? Did you actually see it, or did you just see clips of it, or references to it? Because this film, does get referenced a lot. There's jokes about it as well in some other film, isn't there? Well, they joke about an Amistad 2 or something. I can't remember what.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember what it. I think it might be like a scary movie or something like that. I can't remember. Somebody in comments or whatever, just
yeah.
Where does that come from? Where does that joke of Amistad 2 come from? But yeah, it is. It's just a massive anomaly.
Yeah, that's a good point. That his performance in this film kind of fits where this film lands in kind of the spectrum of filmmaking of Spielberg's filmography. Of like, it's all just it's there. It kind of exists. It's
Yeah.
good. It's good enough, but it's not awful. But it's not great. It's not going to propel anybody's career. It just kind of exists.
Yeah,
somewhere.
it's almost like that job you have that, you know, when you go to a new employer that you look down and you go, oh, you work there.
Yeah.
All right, okay, that's interesting.
I sort of forgot myself that I worked there. Yeah.
You go, oh yeah, it was all right, that job actually. Yeah, it's like kind of when I look back through and I go, oh, I worked at HMV.
Right. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Cool. And you carry on. It's one of those. It is literally not a footnote, but just in the middle, floating in the middle, in amongst, you know, all these other films in between Contact and Ed TV. It's just there. Yeah, it's just there, floating.
And believe me, I've watched some shit movies starring McConaughey already in this kind of run. This is way above most of that.
You really have, yeah. Listening to some of them. Fucking hell, man. Jesus.
So, you know,
this is rather you than me, I think. Because I watched some shit as well for the benefit of other people not having to. But Christ Almighty.
Yeah. This is way above those. It's, you know, it's not even close. But it's just for who he is, an actor, and who's going to become for Spielberg as a director. It's just, it's there.
Yeah. It's just there. Yeah. It's just there, and it's like I say, it's not terrible. It's not. But it's not great.
No,
it's okay. It's perfectly fine. It sits there as being, you know, an average movie dealing with a really important moment in history, and it's. I think there's a reason why we haven't had like. Fucking hell, just to put it into capitalistic terms, there's the reason why we haven't had a 4K Steelbook special edition.
Yeah.
With a booklet, I think, to be honest with you. Not yet, anyway. Maybe we will do at some point, but, you know, the amount of re-releases that, again, Schindler's List has had, you know, with historical booklets come with it, Steelbooks, whatever it may be. I think it says it all, really, doesn't it?
No, I think that's a really nice way to think about it and just finish rattling off. Yeah. Before we do a bit more McConaughey then, thinking about Schindler's List, you're right, we keep coming back there, we knew we would. So I listed kind of Spielberg's historical movies, quote unquote.
Yeah.
So we've got The Colour Purple, Empire of the Sun, then obviously this, Amistad, Saving Private Ryan and Schindler's List, Munich, Lincoln, Bridge of Spies, and The Post. Now I'm sort of putting those 9.
Post.
That's the newspaper one. Counting that as kind of a historical one because he is talking about a point in history. I don't know whether you can include Catch Me If You Can in this. And The Terminal, they feel a bit different because they're so light-hearted and
they're full blown. I think they're.
I mean, Catch Me If You Can is amazing, but you're not going to put Schindler's List to Catch Me If You Can in the same category.
No, even The Terminal. I think The Terminal's great for its part, isn't it? But that's. Again, that's a wonderful anomaly in Spielberg's sort of catalogue, isn't it?
Yeah. So where do you think this? Do we think this is like slap bang in the middle? Is this like just this is just Amistad average, Mr. Average?
Yeah, I think it is. To be fair, I think it is. But again,
I've never seen The Colour Purple. I don't know about you.
That's the only one that I've watched a very long time ago. Very long time ago. When I was on, I think it probably fit around the time I watched this. I think when I was literally on Spielberg. You know, binge, as it were, watching everything that he'd made, which I did a lot when I was, you know, a lot younger, 16 to, you know, early 20s. So just on the rampant. Again, that was knowledge. I was just absorbing filmic knowledge, as it were. You know, I do think this is sort of bang average because I think Munich is a very confused film, isn't it? Again, dealing with very intense subject matter, but tonally it's fucking all over the place. But it's nowhere near as tonal. You know, Amistad's nowhere near as tonally chaotic as that film.
No, that's true.
So I think it's
sort of a bit better than Munich and a bit better than The Post and a bit better than Lincoln. but nowhere near as good as Schindler's List or Saving Private Ryan or Empire of the Sun. It's just kind of like that fits in the middle somewhere and gets a bit lost because it's not the worst and it's not the best.
No, and I think again that's the thing. Even though I rate Munich very poorly, there's still a lot of things in that movie that I remember.
Sure, not least Eric Bana's sex face. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say that because obviously,
sorry,
our mutual colleague Spider Dan and that bloody podcast he did about dodgy sex scenes, as it were. Yeah, but again, you remember it. It's memorable, isn't it? It's very memorable. And there are some other moments in that film that are memorable as well. But yeah, I think it is just very smack bang in the middle. I think there's nothing overtly grandiose about it that you go, fucking hell, that sticks out. But there's nothing truly terrible or that you go, oh, I'm not sure about that. Like that stand out either. That make you remember, like Munich with a dreadful end scene. I think it does. It literally does just fall in the middle of the book pile.
Yes, and it's really interesting. So I'll read you the little bit from Greenlights that I've got about McConaughey's thoughts on Amistad as well, because I think it's going to back up what we've been saying quite a lot. So around this time, he was, just for a little bit of context for those that haven't read it, around this time, he'd obviously had this big success for Time to Kill, but he then chose to, have some time off. He went off to South America, and he's touring around the States at this point. He's got an RV on the back, and he's driving around and just pulling him where he wants. And then this is what he says. We went on location to Rhode Island, where I got to work with Steven Spielberg on Amistad. So this is him and his dog when he says we went. He just drives up with his RV and he stays in it like near the set. It's kind of cool. A film about a slave revolt aboard a Spanish schooner in 1839, and a case that reached the Supreme Court and became notable in the abolition movement. And then he stops. So he doesn't go into any of the kind of filmmaking itself. I was in that film. I'm glad I was in that film, but I was in that film.
Yeah.
This is essentially what he's just said there, right? Which is what we've kind of been saying all the way through. That he writes for pages and pages before this, and it's fascinating and interesting about his life on the road and the people he meets. And then he works with Spielberg, and he goes, yeah, I was in that.
Literally a paragraph.
Yeah.
It's a film about a really important subject matter that spearheaded, was the vanguard of, an important movement that changed the face of the United States of America. And then done.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's in The Newton Boys, which is going to be my next episode. And what he writes about that movie is in the same paragraph and is about the same length. And that is a film, until I'd made this list, I'd never heard of.
No, I mean, I've got to admit that's another one that I'm waiting for you to discuss before I either write it on the list or check it out myself, to be fair. But,
so it's just interesting that he feels the same, clearly, looking back on this time when Amistad is that, as you said, I work for HMV.
Yeah. Great. Cool.
Yeah, which is a shame of what it could have been.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wow, that's bizarre, isn't it? Interesting, and yet bizarre.
All right, I've got a couple of letterbox reviews. They're going to be a little bit. Some of them are really long, so I'm going to do my best to try and cut bits out without it being really obvious. But some, there's bits that I want to take from the top and from the middle, but not necessarily all the waffle in between. So Matt Singer says, Amistad is very much a movie of its time and all that entails. Today, I think it's best appreciated as a collection of an outstanding ensemble of actors doing very good work. That includes Jimon Hounsou. I think I've said his name different every time. I'm so sorry. Of course, as the leader of the slave revolt, but also Matthew McConaughey, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Morgan Freeman, Stellan Skarsgård, and especially Anthony Hopkins doing a thing as John Quincy Adams and doing it quite entertainingly. The only exception is Anna Paquin, who is very lucky that her big scene as the Queen of Spain does not seem to exist on YouTube.
Yeah. Again, same sort of reaction, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it exists.
Anthony Hopkins does a thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. How bizarre.
Okay, Sleepy says, great intro and some other great scenes are stuck in this exhausting white savior courtroom drama. It's meandering, tonally awkward, and the score is sometimes hilariously overbearing. Matthew McConaughey shows up looking ridiculous and feeling way out of place, though, funnily enough, he was also cast in a very similar role in another similar courtroom drama just the year before Amistad was released.
Score's an interesting one. We're not talking about the score, have we? But
No,
again,
because it is John Williams.
Yeah.
But it's not one that's on his show reel, is it? It's not one that's on his greatest hits.
No, I don't think that was included in the tour or whatever it was quite recently.
No.
Yeah,
I watched a documentary at the tail end of last year that was on Disney Plus about him, and yeah, Amistad wasn't one that was widely celebrated or was, I don't think, even discussed at all.
No, I mean, like that reviewer there says, I can't even think of a moment of the score. To be fair, I can't think of anything that stands out with the score.
No,
I'm not even sure I heard a score. Weirdly enough, I think did I just blank it out entirely because it was doing nothing, or is that an issue with the wider film? Then maybe because we know John Williams and what his scores do for movies, don't they, and vice versa. They work in tandem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whether it's Spielberg or Lucas or whatever, they work in tandem. They're equal partners in the endeavor, aren't they? But I'm not being facetious there. I cannot remember.
No, I agree with you.
Score for this movie.
Really if I asked you to hum, any of his other ones, you'd be able to do it just off the top of your head, no problem at all.
Straight away. But this one, I've not got a frigging Scoobies.
Yeah,
interesting.
Okay, last one. Kian Hassini says, it seems that I enjoy every movie in which Matthew McConaughey plays a lawyer, including The Lincoln Lawyer, A Time to Kill, and now Amistad. While I appreciate most of Steven Spielberg's films, I've found some of his historical movies like Lincoln and The Post to be well made, but a bit slow and boring. Initially, I anticipated that Amistad might follow suit, but surprisingly, my fondness for courtroom dramas enabled me to enjoy it more than the others. Although the film dragged at times and felt somewhat lengthy, I found it enjoyable as a whole. The ensemble cast was fantastic, filled with incredible actors. I especially appreciated the performances of Matthew McConaughey, Anthony Hopkins, and I'll just say his name for the 10th time in a different way, Jimon Hounsou. I was also astonished to learn that Hopkins delivered his 7-page courtroom speech in a single take. And he goes on to say more, but there's nothing else about McConaughey. So, yeah. Even that, which is the most positive one of the ones I've shared today, still was kind of saying, it's a bit boring in places.
Yeah. But again, they allude to those smaller moments, the smaller courtroom moments, as being the driving force of the film being enjoyable in places.
Yeah,
it's right. It's right. Those are the better moments. Aside from the flashback, everything else outside of that does drag. It does drag. Unfortunately.
Yeah. It feels like a long film for, what is it, 2 hours 26, 2 hours 30?
Yeah.
It feels long for that, doesn't it?
It does. And, I've got no issue watching long movies at all. I've recently just bought The Seven Samurai on this wonderful British Film Institute, 4K box. And I forgot that was 3.5 hours long, but that doesn't faze me. The idea of watching that doesn't faze me at all because I know how fucking good it is. I know how well paced it is, and that's the thing with this film. The pacing comes and goes, it ebbs and flows like being on the ocean. There's peaks and troughs. There's high moments, there's low moments, and then there is that deadening stillness where there's no wind at all, and you're like, oh, okay. How long's left? Which, for a historical drama with such importance, you don't really want to be fucking doing at all. No, you really don't.
That lovely metaphor you left us with there.
That just came out of my frigging head. I'd love to say I wrote that down, but I don't write any notes at all.
The fact that you can improvise that is even better. But no, I was checking, not checking my phone because I was paying attention to the film, but I was checking my watch a few times. Like, oh Jesus, I was watching this on a Saturday night as well, and I was like, oh, okay, I could be watching John Wick again for the 15th time, and I'm not bought in, I think, was the problem. So it made it feel long.
Yeah, I think that is the fundamental problem, isn't it? For all its well intentions, for all its good moments, it doesn't captivate in the way that you would hope it does.
No.
It's not a marker on the subject matter. It's not a marker on the historical importance. I think it is just a marker on the way it's crafted, the way it's the way it's shot. You know, again, I don't think there's anything truly sort of remarkable in the way it's shot at all. It doesn't feel.
No.
You know, this should feel like a big movie, and it doesn't feel. It feels very small.
And it is Janusz Kaminski, isn't it? It is the guy who Spielberg often works with. It is it's Schindler's List. It is Saving Private Ryan. It is his kind of go-to guy. So
yeah,
just something was just not. Something was off.
Yeah, something was off, completely off, and like Mr. McConaughey says, it kind of just, you know, it's obviously had no lasting bearing on his outlook, maybe on life or whatever, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah,
I'd say the winner of this film is quite clearly Djimon Hounsou, just in terms of springboarding his career, and I suppose that's the best thing you can take away from it, isn't it? Really, is that you know this is the film that gave him that platform to, you know, become this, you know, recognizable character, this recognizable actor across all manner of movies. Whenever I see him, I'm like, hey, he's fucking him, brilliant. He's
definitely one of those guys. It's like, oh, he's in this, great, yeah, 100%,
yeah, because he's just got a wonderful charisma in himself, isn't he? And then, I guess that comes across in this film brilliantly. So, yeah, give him credit where it's due, but I think the credit is purely in those small, contained moments where there's quite clearly some chemistry going.
Yeah.
When for the rest of the film there is very little chemistry at all.
Yeah, fair. So for Hounsou, this is a classic, right? Because it's his star. But for McConaughey, is this a classic, worth catching, or completist only?
Completionist only, I think.
Really? Again, okay. Yeah, fair.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And I think, again, because if you're a Spielberg fan, it's completionist only.
Yeah,
if you're an Anthony Hopkins fan, it's completionist only. If you're a Morgan Freeman fan, it's completionist only.
Yeah.
You know, because you'd forget this film. Looking at this film, you go into Morgan Freeman, let's see what pops up around this film for Morgan Freeman. I mean, Christ, I'm going to have to go back here quite a lot. But again, you've got
Unforgiven, 95.
Yeah. 7. You've got a lot of movies literally populating around this point.
Yeah.
Even Deep Impact.
Yeah.
Deep Impact overshadows this film for him, I think, because it's not a great film, but as soon as it's on, people go, oh, I know this film. Got Outbreak as well. Shawshank Redemption was only, 2 years before this, 3 years before it.
Yeah.
I think it is just a completionist only film for a great many people from my point of view.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. I'm sorry that you ended up with, a completionist only film. I think I've only given you now completionist only films. I'm sorry. We will find you one that is either worth catching at least, or if not a classic, I hope at some point.
It's a means to an end, isn't it? I mean, it's an interesting delve into, an actor's catalogue where you're looking and going, fuck, I forgot about this film entirely. How many people actually know about it?
Yeah. No, I'm thinking now, Hobbs and Shaw. You must have given that. You can't have given that completionist, surely. I'd have to go back and listen, but that feels like a worth catching.
Yeah, I think it.
Now, in the name of the king,
for the chaos. In the name of the king, God, yeah.
Only.
Yeah, definitely completions only, because there's nothing of any value at all in that, is there? Absolutely nothing at all.
There definitely is not. No. What have you got going on there? What have you got interesting that's coming up? What are you thinking about covering soon? I know you were a bit more kind of savvy with the new releases. What have you got on your agenda that you think you've seen in the schedule that's coming out?
Oh, I mean, I'm kind of just waiting for the trailers to drop. Really, I think at the moment I'm trying to keep on top of everything as they get released. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I can't watch everything as it is, but yeah, I just whatever's taking my fancy at the moment, I think.
Yeah.
And just rolling with that. I'm not really I'm trying to avoid just going for the big movies. It's kind of hard when time is restrictive as it is, and we've got little ones running around as well. It's kind of
oh yes, suddenly your time gets halved, quartered. you know.
Yeah, so like with Captain America, me and the missus dropped the little one off at grandma's and then went straight there. And went, oh, should have just kept the little one, really. So yeah, I'm just trying to catch whatever's upcoming. Really, I can't remember what's next, to be quite honest with you. Like I said, I'm just waiting for triggers to pop up and go, that's next. Right, I'm going with that.
Fair enough.
Well,
I always look forward to your next review on YouTube, but I'm not always totally up to date because I'm bad with seeing new releases. As you just said, I've got 2 boys, so I'm not great always getting out, but I bookmark them so I can come back. I like to come and see what you thought after I've seen it myself.
I do try and avoid spoilers as much as I can these days.
Oh, you do. It's my own sense of like even like reading. I don't read. I don't watch. Until I've seen it for myself. I like to try and form that opinion and then.
No, yeah, because I think it's the sense of my tone, isn't it, that comes across as like, oh, well, I don't want to see that anymore.
Well, I won't like anything if I watch it after listening to you, will I?
Yeah.
You'll have ruined everything for me.
Yeah, I do get that when they go, well, I watched your review, and there were no spoilers, but I don't want to watch it anymore. All right. Well, yeah, I am just trying to catch things as they're coming up.
And I'm only joking. You're totally fair. I think you're one of the most reasonable people that I've met in this world of kind of reviewing. Like you come at things fairly and honestly. Yeah. And if it's not good, you're willing to say it, and if it is good, you're willing to say it. I think
Yeah, because I think
you have no agenda, which is great.
No, because I think there's too much of that at the moment, isn't there? I mean, if something's terrible, I'll say it's terrible for the reasons that I think it's terrible.
Yeah,
it has nothing to do with who the person is in the film that's in it, who's making it, what the story's about. If it's terrible, I'll tell you if it's terrible. For the reasons that it's terrible. If it's great, I'll tell you the reason why I think it's great. And they are only my opinions. That's why I very much try and put that very much within them. Like this is only my thoughts. Let's open a dialogue if you think otherwise. And some people are very open to that. And that with the Star Trek Section 31 review, there were quite a few people open to explaining why they don't like it.
Yeah.
There are a few people out there just like, well, Kurtzman fucking cunt and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, well, I don't care about that. I just want decent story, and I haven't had any decent Star Trek stories, so I'm going to tell you why I think it's garbage. But then provide the receipts as much as I can do, and that's all I do. I try and provide the receipts from my point of view, not because somebody else said something, not because Rotten Tomatoes, says it in the bullet point of why it's rubbish. No, I will look at it and come with the receipts, like we have done with this film. We've come with receipts from our point of view of why it didn't work for us, why it is a forgotten movie.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate you. I know lots of people do. Thank you, mate. Keep it up.
Oh, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure chatting to yourself. I love that. I love this stuff you do, and fair play to you. Fair play to you for trudging through some really great films. I'm looking forward, especially when we come to the reconnaissance. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Later on down the line. But unfortunately, you got to trudge through some almighty shit. Before you
it's
get
true.
There. And there's one movie that I'm really looking forward to. Which one? The Ghost of Girlfriends Past.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I can't wait. Good luck.
And that's all for another episode. Thanks once again to Andy, and thanks once again to you for listening and partaking in this journey with me through the reconnaissance. That, of course, was Amistad. Next up in a fortnight, as discussed in the show, I'm going to be watching the lesser-known Newton Boys from Richard Linklater, and I'm going to be joined once more by Tony Farina to discuss Eminem's performance as Willis Newton. Until next time, be excellent to each other and make sure you take the time to treat yourself too. I'm Jack signing off. Yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers!
You just gotta keep living, man. Livin.
Cut.